Snow fell in thin, whispering sheets, drifting across the pines like a veil pulled over a dying world. Jonas Hale had bedded down early, his fire low, his rifle within reach, and his old Mustang, Bramble, tethered close enough that Jonas could hear the soft grind of the animal's teeth. It was a cold that chewed through wool and bone, the kind that made a man wish for company, even the kind he didn't trust. But Jonas was alone, as he had been for years, and he had long stopped wishing, which made the shape curl beside his horse all the more impossible. He caught sight of it when Bramble snorted sharply, one of those low, warning sounds the old Mustang made only when something living was too close. Jonas sat up, hand on his revolver, the camp's shadows swaying with the wind. He didn't move for a solid breath. Then another. The shape didn't stir. A blanket of frost shimmered on the thin outline of the figure. He rose slowly, boots crunching softly in the snow, revolver steady. The fire cast just enough of glow that he could make out the thin shoulders of a young woman, curled almost fetal beside Bramble's forelegs. The Mustang stood like a sentinel, breath billowing in slow clouds above her. She looked dead. Jonas crouched, nudging her shoulder with the back of his glove. "Hey, you alive there?" She flinched with a weak, broken gasp, so faint he might have imagined it. Her fingers twitched, her lips parted, and in a hoarse, sleep-tangled voice, she whispered a name. "Laramie." Jonas froze, so hard the cold seemed to stop biting for a moment. That name was a ghost. He hadn't heard it spoken for 3 years. Hadn't wanted to. It was tied to a grave he never admitted belonged to someone he loved. It was the last place he'd seen his brother alive, and the first place he understood how easily a man could lose himself. Hearing it now felt like a bullet lodged against his ribs. He grabbed the girl's shoulder again, firmer this time. "Where'd you hear that name?" But her eyes stayed shut. Her breath thinned. She sagged back into the snow like her body had spent the last of whatever kept her alive. Jonas cursed under his breath, sheathing his revolver and turning her onto her back. She was young, 19, maybe 20, and starved nearly to the point of transparency. Dirt streaked her cheeks. Her clothes, thin cotton and wool meant for warmer lands, were torn. Her boots were mismatched, one missing half its sole. She looked more like a runaway farmhand than any outlaw. He lifted her gently, carrying her to the fire. The moment she felt heat, she shuddered violently, teeth clacking like castanets. Jonas wrapped her in his spare blanket, fed the fire more wood, and checked her hands, cuts, rope burns, a few bruises old enough to yellow but not old enough to forget. "God help you," he muttered. "Nobody should be out here alone." A tiny sound escaped her, fear, pain, or both, but she didn't wake. Jonas settled beside her, rifle across his lap, eyes on the darkness. He didn't drift into sleep again. Couldn't. That name echoed in his skull, like a mocking him. And when dawn finally broke, pale and brill across the timberline, the girl's eyes fluttered open. She saw him. She saw the fire. Then panic hit like a stampede. She pushed herself back so fast she nearly toppled into the flames. "Don't touch me." Jonas held up both hands. "Easy. You passed out half-frozen against my horse. I pulled you from the snow. That's all." Her breath came sharp, shallow. Dirt streaked her forehead. Her brown eyes darted everywhere but at him. Then slowly, painfully, she nodded once. "Water?" He handed her the canteen. She drank like someone who hadn't tasted clean water in days. Maybe longer. "What's your name?" Jonas asked quietly. After hesitating, she whispered, "Ada." Just Ada. Her hand wouldn't stop shaking. "Where are you coming from?" She looked down, tightening the blanket around herself. "Nowhere that matters." Jonas didn't push. Not yet. But one thing was clear. Ada wasn't running toward anything. She was running from something, and it was close. She kept throwing small, frightened glances at Bramble, as though she half expected the horse to strike her. The Mustang merely snorted, stamping at the frost. "You look like you know horses," Jonas said, watching her reaction. Her lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. "No, I like them. They remember kindness." Jonas nodded toward the place she'd been found. That why you curled up beside mine. Her cheeks colored with embarrassment. I thought he'd keep me warm. He did, Jonas replied. I woke, 'cause he didn't like someone touching him. He's stubborn that way. She drew her knees closer. I'm sorry. I just needed somewhere safe. Somewhere to hide. Somewhere to not die in the snow. He studied her a moment longer. She couldn't weigh more than 90 pounds. Her face had the softened edges of someone not meant for hard labor, yet her hands were rough, scraped raw, and one wrist was swollen, faint rope burns circling it like a brand. Whoever she came from, they hadn't let her go willingly. What happened to you? Jonas asked. Ada swallowed hard. I can't tell you. You can or you won't. She didn't answer. Before Jonas could try again, Bramble swung his head toward the tree-line, ears pricking. Jonas stiffened. Bramble never spooked without reason. A faint tremor hummed through the earth. Then, hoofbeats. Ada's breath hitched. No, they found me. Jonas grabbed his revolver and kicked out what remained of the fire. Smoke twisted upward in a final gasp before darkness swallowed the camp. How many? He whispered. I don't know. 3 last I saw. But they had more. Please, don't let them take me back. Jonas moved behind a boulder and motioned for her to stay low. The hoofbeats grew louder, crunching snow in heavy, unhurried rhythms. The confidence of men who believed their hunt was over. 3 riders emerged through the pines, dusted with frost, rifles slung casually across their saddles. Their horses steamed in the cold morning air, breath drifting like smoke. The man leading them had a thick coat, a crooked smile, and the kind of eyes that searched a place like everything in it already belonged to him. Jonas stepped out just enough to be seen, gun drawn, steady. That's far enough, he called. The lead rider grinned wider. Morning, friend. We're hunting a runaway girl. Small thing, brown hair, wears fear like a second skin. His smile sharpened. You seen her? Jonas didn't glance behind him. Why were you hunting her? She stole something. Ada trembled behind the boulder. Jonas cocked his head. What did she steal? The man's smile faltered. Something important. That's so. Jonas didn't blink, didn't breathe. He saw it then. The flicker of impatience in the man's jaw, the twitch in his fingers. These men weren't lawmen. They were hunters. And Ada wasn't a thief. She was a witness. The man's smile vanished. Last chance. Hand her over or this gets messy. Jonas's voice was calm. No. The rifle cocked. The world went quiet. Then everything exploded. The first shot tore a chunk of bark inches from Jonas's head. He fired back twice, the recoil kicking through his arm as he ducked behind the boulder. Ada, stay down, he barked. A rider charged forward, hoofs pounding, rifle raised. Jonas rolled, fired once, and the man toppled from the saddle with a cry that echoed across the trees. The other 2 panicked, horses rearing. One yelled, He's alone, take him. Snow blasted around them as hooves tore through the clearing. Jonas fired again, forcing one rider to retreat behind a pine. The other bolted outright, shouting, We'll be back with the others. Ada stared, shaking violently, knuckles white around the blanket. Jonas rose, scanning the tree-line. They were gone. For now. He turned back to Ada and dropped to one knee. You need to tell me the truth. Right now. She hesitated, then broke. I didn't steal anything. I just heard something. Something I wasn't supposed to. A name. A place. That's why they want me dead. What name? Ada's lips parted, trembling. Laramie. Jonas felt the world tilt under him. His brother's last breath. A blood-stained letter. A grave with no justice. Ada stared at him, wide-eyed. You know it. Jonas swallowed the taste of iron in his mouth. Tell me what you heard. She shook her head, tears spilling. I can't. I'll die for it. They'll kill you too. Maybe, but they'll kill you for sure if we stay put. Ada looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. You'd help me? You don't even know me. Jonas stood, offering a hand. Doesn't matter. You're hunted, and now so am I. She placed her hand in his. And for the first time since the gunfire stopped, Jonas felt the day shift into something he could no longer walk away from. They moved fast, packing the meager camp and saddling Bramble. Jonas helped Ada climb up behind him. She didn't have the strength to manage it alone. She clung to his coat with cold-numb fingers as they rode through the thinning pines. The morning sun struggled through a veil of gray clouds. Snowflakes drifted lazily, hinting at a storm building somewhere in the mountains. Jonas kept them off the main trails, weaving through rocky inclines and narrow deer paths. Ada stayed silent, breath trembling against his back. "Those men," Jonas finally said. "Who do they ride for?" Ada swallowed hard. "Garrick Shaw." The name meant nothing to him, but her expression said everything. She continued, voice barely above a whisper. "He runs a mining camp south of here. Forces people to work off debts. Most never leave." "And you?" Jonas asked. "I wasn't supposed to leave either." "Why were you there?" Ada hesitated. "My stepfather sold me." Jonas felt rage burn cold in his chest. "How old are you?" 19. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Some cruelties had no words fit for them. They rode until Ada's shivers worsened. Jonas halted beside a fallen log, helping her to the ground. She hugged herself, teeth chattering. He built a small fire under the log's natural shelter, shielding it from the wind. Ada crouched close, hands outstretched to flames. Jonas watched her face, the fear carved into it deeper than the cold. "You said you heard something," he said. "Something about Laramie." Ada's eyes dropped to the fire. "Shaw was talking with another man. They didn't know I was nearby. I was cleaning the tool shed and I heard them say the name." Jonas leaned closer. "What about it?" Her whisper trembled. "They said the man they killed near Laramie wasn't supposed to have fought back." Jonas went still. His breath left him in one sharp, painful exhale. Ada didn't notice. Her eyes were locked on the fire, staring into some memory she hated. "Shaw laughed," she said. "He said the man begged him to spare someone named Jonas before they put a bullet in his throat." Jonas's stomach turned to stone. Ada looked up slowly, realization dawning. "Was that you?" Jonas forced air into his lungs. "My brother." Ada's voice cracked. "I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't know." A silence settled between them, raw, aching, heavy with truths neither could unhear. Jonas looked away, jaw tight. "We need to keep moving." Ada stood slowly, legs trembling. "Will you still help me?" He didn't answer immediately. Rage warred with grief behind his ribs. But he saw the terror in her eyes, terror he understood all too well. "Yeah," he said at last. "I'll help you. Shaw's riders will be back. And we're not letting them find us." Ada nodded shakily. "Where will we go?" Jonas mounted Bramble and extended a hand. "Somewhere they ain't." She climbed up behind him, gathering the blanket around herself. As they rode into the wind-scoured wilderness, Jonas felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. And something else he didn't dare name yet. The girl who whispered ghosts had dragged the past out of its grave. Now they would face it together. And the frontier, cold and merciless as it was, suddenly felt a shade less empty. Cold came at them harder than bullets. Jonas pierced road with a woman wrapped in his coat, her breath shallow against his chest, her fingers stiff as wood. Dawn broke pale over the high plains, the sky colorless, the world rimmed in frost like it had forgotten the sun existed. His horse snorted clouds of steam, hooves crunching through crusted snow as they pushed toward the river fork. Ada hadn't spoken since the night she'd whispered his brother's name. Jonas kept waiting for her to say more, to explain why a stranger would gasp the name of man Jonas had buried his memory like a wound, but she slept in broken stretches, fading in and out. Every time she stirred, she clutched the horse's mane like she feared falling into some darkness she wouldn't climb out of again. By the time they reached the river, ice coated the edges in white slabs. Jonas dismounted, lifting Ada gently. "Stay awake," he said. "Once we cross, the canyon will cut the wind." She nodded, dazed, trembling violently beneath his coat. Her lips were nearly bloodless. "I can walk," she whispered. "You can barely stand." The river groaned under the temperature shift, long cracks echoing like distant rifle fire. Jonas scanned the timberline. Tracks, maybe 3 riders, passed here not long ago. Shaw's men? It prickled the back of his neck. He pulled Ada onto the horse again, leading it across the thinnest ice where the current slowed. A crack split under the horse's hind leg. Jonas froze. Ada tensed. He whispered, easy. Then the ice gave. The horse lunged forward, but the sheet shattered beneath Jonas. Water swallowed him whole, freezing knives stabbing into every joint. He gasped under the surface, boots dragging him down. He broke through with a roar, slamming elbows on the ice. Ada screamed, reaching toward him. Jonas! Stay back, he choked. He clawed forward, breath burning his lungs. The horse scrambled out, pulling the reins taut. Jonas heaved himself onto solid ice, rolling onto his back, coughing river water. Ada slid from the saddle and crawled to him. You're freezing, she whispered. So are you. They didn't have long. The cold would kill quicker now. He forced himself up, teeth rattling. We make the canyon. There's caves. Wood. Ada took his arm. He didn't shake her off. Her touch steadied him in some strange, old ache he didn't understand yet. They trudged through the rising wind, Jonas stumbling from the cold, vision blurring at the edges. Ada kept pace, though her lips shook violently and her voice faltered. You knew him, Jonas finally said, the words catching. My brother. Ada didn't answer at first. Only the wind spoke, dragging snow in thin sheets across the ground. When she finally did, her voice cracked. Yes. Why didn't you say so sooner? I didn't know if you'd trust me. I don't, Jonas muttered. But he wanted to. God help him. He wanted to. They reached the canyon mouth as the first true windstorm hit. Snow spiraled violently, turning the world to a white blur. Jonas pushed Ada into the narrow gap first. She slipped inside just as the world vanished into white noise. And then everything went dark. The cave smelled of old smoke and damp stone. Jonas stripped off his soaked shirt, hands shaking, lighting a fire with fingers nearly numb. Ada huddled close, staring at him with a mix of worry and something deeper, fear maybe or memory. You almost died, she whispered. You almost froze, he countered. She looked down. I'm used to cold. He frowned. No woman should ever say something like that with such emptiness. As the fire strengthened, warmth seeped into Jonas's skin, painful at first. Ada finally shed her wet boots, wincing. Jonas noticed the blisters, the red freeze burn along her ankles. She must have walked miles before he found her. He tossed another branch in the flames. You're not from around here. That much is clear. No, she murmured. I came west following someone. Following my brother? Her breath hitched. Jonas leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Tell me? Ada pulled something from her satchel, wrapped in cloth. Her fingers trembled as she revealed it. A small photograph, edges worn, the sepia image cracked. Jonas reached, heart punching against his ribs. It was Eli Pierce, his younger brother, smiling, standing beside another man, broad, well-dressed, a wolf smile carved on his face. Ezekiel Shaw. Jonas's stomach dropped. Ada saw his reaction. You know him. I know the devil when I see him. Her eyes filled with a pain Jonas recognized too easily. Shaw promised to help Eli. Promised to protect him. Eli trusted him. And when Shaw wanted something, Eli refused. She swallowed. He refused because of me. Jonas lifted his gaze. Who are you to him? She closed her eyes, tears threatening. His wife. Jonas froze. Everything in his body went tight and hollow. Eli hadn't written in 2 years. Jonas had assumed. Hell, he didn't know what he'd assumed. Ada continued, voice raw. I married him in Virginia City. He was kind. He was gentle. He talked about you when he thought I was asleep. He carried guilt, deep guilt. I think he wanted to come back to you. But Shaw wouldn't let him leave. Jonas stared at the photograph until his vision blurred. Shaw killed him. Ada nodded slowly. Or had him killed. I don't know. All I know is Eli disappeared. and Shaw sent men after me when I tried to run. Why run? Jonas whispered. Because I was carrying Eli's child, she said softly. Jonas felt something snap inside him. Ada wiped her cheek. I lost a baby 3 months ago. He hadn't expected that. The loss in her voice scraped something raw in him. She wasn't just wounded. She was hollowed out, carved by grief the way the wind carved stone. Jonas's jaw tightened. Shaw wants you because you know what he did. And because Eli left me something, she murmured. Something Shaw wants back. What? A ledger. Names. Deals. Crimes. Everything Shaw ever did. Eli hid it before he died. Jonas exhaled, firelight reflecting in his dark eyes. So now we're both hunted by the same man. Ada looked at him, exhaustion mixing with a strange trust. You're the only person I know who might stand against him. Jonas moved closer to the fire. I ain't nobody's savior. No, Ada whispered, but you're Eli's brother. Outside, a low growl echoed through the canyon. Jonas stiffened. What was that? Ada whispered. Jonas grabbed his rifle. Mountain lion. Is it close? He listened. The growls sounded again, closer. Stones rattled near the cave mouth. Jonas positioned himself between Ada and the entrance, cocking the rifle. The lion appeared, a massive tawny shape, yellow eyes glowing the fire's edge. It snarled, tail twitching. Jonas held his breath. The rifle shook slightly. His hands weren't fully recovered from the river. The lion tensed a leap. Jonas fired. The shot cracked the cave, echoing like thunder. The lion staggered, roared, then fled into the dark. Blood spraying across the snow outside. Silence followed. Ada exhaled a shuddering breath. You saved us. Jonas lowered the rifle. Not the first time tonight. Ada's eyes met his in a way that made the cave feel suddenly warmer, the fire suddenly softer. But then Jonas looked away, jaw locking tight again. There were feelings he couldn't afford. Not now. Not ever. We leave at dawn, he said, before Shaw's men pick up our trail. Ada nodded, pulling his coat tighter. Thank you for not leaving me. Jonas didn't answer, but the truth pressed against him, heavy and unwelcome. He couldn't have left her even if he tried. Dawn crept pale across the canyon, turning stone walls pink and cold. Jonas saddled the horse, testing its leg where the ice had cut deep. It limped but held strong. Ada moved slowly, still exhausted but steadier than the night before. They followed the narrow ridge toward the high pass. Snow blew off the cliffs in thin veils. Jonas kept scanning the horizon, tracks behind them, faint but present. Shaw's riders were close. Ada walked beside him. Why didn't you ever go after Eli when he stopped riding? Jonas clenched his jaw. Because we'd fought before he left. Said things we shouldn't have. Last letter I got felt like goodbye. He never stopped hoping you'd forgive him. Jonas looked away. You talk like you knew him better than I ever did. I married him, she said quietly. But you're his blood. They rounded a bend, and Jonas stopped cold. 3 riders blocked the ridge ahead. Shaw's men. Jonas grabbed Ada's arm, pulling her behind a rock formation. Stay down. She crouched, breathing fast. What do we do? Jonas checked his rifle. Only 3 bullets left. They haven't seen us yet, he whispered. But they will. One rider dismounted, examining the ground. Jonas felt Ada tense behind him like a wire pulled too tight. He steadied his breath. Action came to him like memory, short, quick, decisive. He fired. The first rider dropped. The others dove for cover. Bullets screamed off stone, dust spraying over Jonas's face. He pushed Ada lower. Run back, down the ridge. No, she whispered fiercely. I'm not leaving you. Jonas fired again, hitting the second man in the shoulder. The third surged forward, gun blazing. Jonas ducked, returning fire, and the man toppled from his horse, rifle skidding across the rock. Silence returned, broken only by the wind. Ada crawled toward the nearest man. Jonas grabbed her wrist. Don't. He might still be alive. That's the problem. But Ada pulled free, touching the man's throat. He's dead. Jonas exhaled. Good. Ada met his eyes. You don't like killing. You pretend you do, but you don't. Jonas didn't answer. They hurried down the pass, knowing more riders were coming. Shaw's shadow stretched over them now, long, merciless, patient. When the wind shifted, Jonas looked at Ada with something between warning and resolve. When we reached the valley, he said, "You'll show me that ledger." She nodded. "I will." And then, Jonas continued, voice low, "We end this. Shaw dies." Ada's gaze held his. Together, Jonas felt the weight of the word. Together, something he hadn't had in years. Something he didn't deserve. But he didn't push it away. Not this time. They moved deeper into mountains, toward danger, toward truth, toward the final reckoning neither could escape. And for the first time, Jonas Pierce didn't feel like he was running from his past. He felt like he was riding straight into it. The valley yawned before them, a frozen expanse dotted with scrub pines and jagged rock outcroppings. Jonas Pierce rode at the lead, Bramble's hooves cutting deep tracks into the hardened snow. Behind him, Ada's figure, wrapped in his coat, shifted with every step. Her eyes, wide and wary, flicked toward the ridge they had just ascended. 3 shadows lingered there, fading into the snow haze. Shaw's riders, relentless and patient. Jonas' jaw clenched. They had a long road to safety, and each mile stretched thinner, with the threat pressing from above. "Keep close," he muttered, voice low but firm, the wind whipping it away before it reached her ears. Ada tightened her grip on the horse's mane, nodding silently. She had followed men like Shaw before, had survived worse, but the look in Jonas' storm-gray eyes made her pulse quicken with something that felt like hope, fragile yet impossible to ignore. The canyon's walls narrowed suddenly, forcing them into a narrow trail that snaked between cliffs. One misstep would send them tumbling into the frozen river below. Bramble moved carefully, ears forward, breath clouding in the cold air. Jonas scanned every ledge, every shadow. The rifle at his side was steady, though his hand still bore the sting of the icy river's grip from 2 nights ago. "I can't keep running forever," Ada whispered. Her voice was a ghost, frail but urgent. "Shaw, he's clever. He'll trap us." She swallowed hard, lips chapped, eyes darting to a distant outcropping. "We need a plan." Jonas didn't answer immediately. He was calculating, measuring every option, feeling the winds bite, the sunless sky's pallor pressing down like a weight. Then he said, "We don't have a choice. We make the canyon our advantage. Narrow passes, cliffs above. He can't bring his men all at once." He glanced at her, hazel eyes hard. "And we don't stop, not until we find cover." The trail widened suddenly, and the crunch of snow under horses' hooves was louder than Jonas liked. From a ridge above, a sharp whistle cut the air. Jonas' rifle was up in an instant, the world narrow into sight and trigger. 3 riders emerged from the haze, barrels raised, their horses lunging forward. They were disciplined, trained, shadows of Shaw's cruelty made manifest. "Stay low." Jonas barked. Ada flinched but followed, crouching behind a rock just as the first shot rang out. Muzzle flashes lit their faces with cold fire. Jonas returned fire, each shot precise, each breath measured despite the pounding of his heart. The ground shook with hoofbeats and gunfire. Bramble reared at a stray bullet, and Jonas swung a hand, calming him, forcing focus. The world was white and red and wind and smoke, a blur of life and death. One rider fell, a flinch in the snow marking him dead before he hit the ground. The others pulled back, taking cover. Jonas' chest burned, lungs tight. Ada's fingers trembled on the satchel at her side. The ledger Eli had left hidden, the last proof of Shaw's crimes. Her gaze met Jonas, and in it he saw fear, yes, but also resolve. The kind of grit that could survive the unforgiving West. He signaled, and they slipped down a side path, cliffs pressing in on either side. Snow scraped at their faces. Every breath was pain. Jonas felt Ada's hand brush against his arm, a silent warning, or maybe a plea. He didn't flinch. He couldn't. Their survival depended on discipline, on keeping every nerve sharp. Every step closer to safety brought them into the jaws of danger. The ridge narrowed to a knife-edge trail. Jonas forced Bramble forward, the horse's hooves slipping slightly on ice. Behind them, Ada's pale face mirrored tension and fatigue. He glanced back. No pursuit yet, but the wind carried the faintest rattle of hooves, a reminder that Shaw's shadow was patient, always patient. And then the trail ended at a rocky bluff. Below, the valley spread in frozen expanse, white and empty. Jonas surveyed it. They had no choice but to make a desperate run across open ground to reach the shelter hidden among the rocks. He dismounted swiftly, pulling Ada down with him. They pressed against the bluff, breath fogging in the bitter wind. Jonas peered through binoculars he had stashed in Bramble's saddlebag, scanning the valley for ambush. "Ready?" he asked, voice tight. Ada nodded, gripping the satchel. "We run fast and we run smart. One shot, one chance." The air grew tense, snow drifting like ghosts. Jonas counted silently. Then they bolted, Bramble lunging ahead like a living engine, Jonas and Ada clinging, hearts hammering. Bullets whined past, striking snow, dislodging stones. Jonas fired twice, hitting a horse's flank and toppling a man. Ada screamed at the wind, face pressed to his shoulder, feeling the weight of inevitability. Life and death were dancing together, and neither could step aside. By the time they reached the rocks on the far side of the valley, both were gasping, frost coating their lashes and beards. The ledger was safe in Ada's arms. Jonas pressed his back against a boulder, rifle ready. Silence fell like a heavy blanket, broken only by the distant wind and occasional distant hoofbeats. Jonas checked her face. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough. Ada nodded, cheeks flushed with exertion and cold. "I'm fine," she lied, though her trembling hands betrayed her. "We did it." He allowed himself a brief nod, eyes scanning the horizon for shadows. Then he turned his attention back to the ledger, letting curiosity and dread collide. He knew what was inside. The proof of Shaw's betrayals, the names of those he had killed, cheated, and terrorized. "Eli trusted you with this?" Jonas asked softly. Ada nodded, her eyes filled with memory and loss. He wanted the world to know. Shaw's reach could have hidden it forever. "I promised him." "You promised," Jonas repeated, voice low, "that we'd finish this." And finish it they would. Snow drifted across the valley floor as the sun broke weakly over the mountains. Jonas' hands shook as he loaded his rifle. Ada checked the satchel, making sure the ledger was secure. They were a small, fragile team against a monster who had taken so much from them. And yet, there was a spark neither could deny, a bond forged in cold blood and relentless pursuit. Hours passed, tension mounting, until Shaw himself appeared on the horizon, flanked by two men, his black coat flapping in the wind, face twisted in rage. Jonas and Ada rose from cover. Heartbeats thundered. There would be no more running. "Shaw!" Jonas called, voice carrying over the valley. "It ends today." Shaw's eyes flicked to Ada, hatred and greed flashing. "You should have stayed hidden," he spat. "All of it. Yours, hers. None of it belongs to you." Jonas stepped forward, rifle steady, gaze unwavering. Ada stood beside him, ledger clutched like a talisman. The air grew electric. Snow whipped around them, carrying the echo of gunshots that would soon come. Shaw fired first. Jonas dodged, rolling behind a boulder. Ada froze, then followed instinctively, throwing herself low. A firefight erupted, short, brutal, violent. Each shot precise, each dodge measured. The valley floor was alive with echoes of metal and snow, dust and fear. Then came the moment Jonas had been waiting for. Shaw advanced, reckless, thinking his men had the advantage. But the rifle in Jonas' hand spoke louder than any words. One shot rang out. Shaw's leg buckled. He fell to the snow, rage turning to shock, hands clutching at the cold ground. The other two men fled, leaving their leader exposed. Jonas approached cautiously. Shaw glared fury in his dark eyes, but was impotent, a man stripped of power by his own greed. Ada stepped forward, holding the ledger high. "All of it," she said, voice strong, "is gone from your control." Shaw's lips curled in a snarl. Jonas' eyes met Ada's. She nodded. Together, They turned their backs on the defeated man, leaving him to stew in the valley's frozen emptiness, a shadow of the terror he had once been. Bramble snorted at their side, snow clinging to his mane. Jonas rested a hand on the horse, feeling the weight of the ordeal slowly ebb. Ada exhaled, her breath forming clouds in the cold air, shoulders relaxing for the first time in weeks. Jonas glanced at her. "We're alive," he said softly. "Yes," she whispered. "And free." The wind carried the valley's emptiness, sharp and clean. For the first time, Jonas allowed himself to think beyond survival, beyond revenge. He saw in Ada's eyes a reflection of hope, grief, resilience, all mingled into a fragile, hard-earned strength. And then Jonas understood something essential. The frontier wasn't just a place to fight. It was a measure of will, endurance, and heart. Ada leaned against him, sharing warmth, silent acknowledgement passing between them. They had lost much, but they had also claimed something greater than vengeance. Trust, loyalty, and a bond forged under fire, ice, and relentless pursuit. The sun climbed weakly above the mountains. Snow sparkled around them like shards of glass. Jonas turned to the valley one last time, gazed lingering on the distant ridges where Shaw had threatened to destroy everything. And then he exhaled, allowing himself a rare, quiet smile. So, what do we take from this tale? Perhaps it is this: the frontier was never kind. It tested every soul, demanded courage, and revealed the truth about those who dared to live within it. Jonas, Pierce, and Ada survived not because they were strongest, but because they endured, trusted, and refused to let hatred dictate the shape of their lives. And in that endurance, we find the quiet victories: love, loyalty, and the courage to rise from the ashes of what was lost. If this story moved you, remember, the frontier may be unforgiving, but so are the hearts of those who fight for what's right. Share your thoughts, reflections, and favorite moments. Stories like these endure only when they are remembered.